Hello, and welcome to the Christian Habits Podcast. This is the podcast that will help you break free from your strongholds, draw closer to God, and develop habits that will help you love God and others better. And now, here's your host, Barb Raveling.
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. It's so good to have all of you here. And I am podcasting to you from Astoria, Oregon. We are still continuing to do travel physical therapy. My husband is working here in Astoria, and we're living in a cute little one-bedroom apartment overlooking the Columbia River. I get to go on walks and hear and see seals when I go on my walk each day. So it's just a really fun place to live, and we're excited to be in this new location. But today on this episode, I'm going to talk about loneliness, how to stop being lonely. And that's something, I've experienced at times during this past year as we've transitioned our lives to a life of travel where we aren't always around friends and people we know. And I know you guys have experienced this too. In fact, you might be feeling lonely right now as you listen to this. February, a lot of times, is a month when we feel lonely because it's Valentine's Day and we think, oh, we wish we were in a relationship if we're not, or we think, oh, I wish I were in a better relationship sometimes if we're in a relationship. So it's a month that can have a lot of expectations, a lot of unrealistic expectations, and that can make us feel lonely. So let's look at loneliness today. Mother Teresa once said, the greatest disease in the West today is not TB or leprosy, it is being unwanted, unloved, and uncared for. We can cure physical diseases with medicine, but the only cure for loneliness, despair, and hopelessness is love. And loneliness is an epidemic in the West, and it's an epidemic in our modern culture amongst both the young and the old. People are feeling more lonely and more disconnected, even though in some ways we're more connected than ever. So first of all, let's talk about why does God allow loneliness? And I think the simple answer is that God isn't a micromanager, right? He lets us do our own things. And often the things we do lead to loneliness. Like if you walk into a restaurant, you'll see people on their phones, even if they're sitting with each other, or people, they watch TV at night. There's so many things we do in this day and age that cause us to be lonely and keep us from connection. And I also think that God allows Christians to feel lonely sometimes for things he wants to accomplish in our lives. I remember when I was a mother, I had 4 young kids, I was staying home, and I think like 3 of my really closest friends moved out of town at once. Actually, maybe 4 of them. And I was feeling very lonely. I was so unhappy in that phase of my life, but God used my loneliness to draw me closer to him and also to help me mature in ways I wouldn't have matured if I hadn't ever been that lonely. So God uses loneliness to help us grow, but he doesn't want us to stay in loneliness, right? The 2 greatest commandments are love God and love others, and both of those commandments speak to relationship. So God wants us to be close to him, and he wants us to be close to others and to love well. And the more we do that, the less lonely we're going to feel. Thing is, though, loving others involves effort, and breaking free from loneliness, that also involves effort. So before we get started on how to overcome it, let's look at some different causes of loneliness. And I thought of 4 different causes. So one is situational. Okay, so the most obvious cause is that we don't have friends or family around, right? Like here, me living in Astoria, Oregon, I don't know anybody here. So situationally, I'm going to be lonely because I don't have friends here. Or we might have friends, but they're not close friends. Or we have friends in our regular lives, but we're currently someplace else where we don't have friends. Like maybe you're at a conference or someplace where you feel like, oh, everybody knows each other and I don't. We may also feel lonely if we're with a group of people who know each other well and we're not a part of their group. And actually, that's one of the reasons social media can make us feel lonely, because we see all these other people that seem like they are in groups. Okay, so the first one's situational. Second one's emotional. And that's the times where we have friends and family, but we don't feel like they love us. And this happened to me when my kids were young. For some reason, I got into a no one loves me kick, and it was hard to get out of it. So that's something that can happen to us. It can also happen to us if we're with a group of people who all believe differently than we do. And especially if we've heard those people condemning people like us, we automatically think they don't love us, even though they may still love us and probably love us, even though we don't believe the way they think we should believe. Okay, another type of loneliness is social loneliness. And this is something you might experience if you're naturally shy or you're socially awkward or if you have low self-esteem. And you look at all those confident, outgoing people out there and, you think, I'll never be able to make friends. I'm too awkward, right? So that makes us feel lonely and it makes us feel like we don't have hope. And also because we're Christians, we can sometimes beat ourselves up over this and say, I should be better at this since I'm a Christian. And that leads to the last type of loneliness, and that's spiritual loneliness. As Christians, we have the opportunity for one more type of loneliness, and that's loneliness in our relationship with God. So if we're not feeling close to Him, that can make us feel more lonely than ever. So how do we stop being lonely? After all, you can't just snap your fingers and say, oh, I'm going to stop being lonely, right? The truth is it takes a bit of work to overcome loneliness. So we have to know what the difference is between a desire and a goal. So a desire is, I want more friends, or I don't want to feel lonely. A goal is I'm going to try to make some new friends today. I'm going to ask 3 people to do things, or there's all kinds of things we can put into a goal. So if we want to stop being lonely, we have to set a goal of what we're going to do to overcome our loneliness. And let's look at some different steps we can take to end loneliness. And this will be based on, the different types of loneliness. So the first one we'll look at is situational loneliness. And the step 1 is to be proactive in making friends. This is something we do when we move to a new town. We try to join a home group or Bible study as soon as possible. And then I'll go all out in trying to make friends there. So sometimes we'll just be with the group once a week. But I noticed that some churches, some towns, they're so good at inviting us to do things during the week, like to go hiking. When we were in Santa Fe, they invited me to go hiking with them, out for lunch. Some people are just so good at reaching out to others, but a lot of times they're not. So we're going to have to be the ones, even if we're in new situations, we're going to have to be the ones to reach out to others. And I had to do this once when I was in Hamilton. I was in a situation where I didn't have that many friends and I was forced to go out of my comfort zone, and I just made it a project. I'm going to start asking women to do things. So I even made a list of women I'd like to get to know, and I'd ask them to go on a walk. I just feel like that's a less awkward way to do something with somebody, or maybe go out for coffee. And the first time you ask them, it just feels really uncomfortable and awkward. The second time you ask them, I found really was maybe a little bit awkward, but not that much. And by the third time, it was easy and super fun. So make it a project, make a list of all the people you might ask to do things. And then when you start doing things with them, you'll have to kind of find out, do you guys like talking about the same things? Do you have common interests? Does this person want to spend as much time with you as you want to spend with them? If they don't take it personally, because a lot of people, they don't have as much free time. Like say if they have a bunch of family in town, they might not have as much free time, or if they work full time. And some people really just don't value relationships. So don't take that personally if you find that you want to spend more time with somebody else. Just think to yourself, maybe I'll have to try 10 people to find 3 friends or 2 friends, okay? Because it's kind of hard to find friends. Okay, another step you can take for this type of loneliness is connect with old friends by phone. That's something I do. As we travel, I'll call up old friends and I'll go on walks with them and visit with them while I walk, or call my family, my brothers and my sister and my mom. So that's a great way to connect with people. Or you could even meet with a couple, like say if you have friends who live someplace else, you could meet with them via Facebook. My husband and I have done that, or FaceTime, I guess is what you call it. And like the end of the day, we'll meet and visit with some of our friends or family. And that's a really fun thing to do. Okay, the third step you can take is to be proactive in building community. And building community is a little bit different than making friends. With friends, it's more like just one-on-one. But with community, you're looking for a group of people. That's like you want to feel like you belong someplace. And one of the best ways to make friends is to build a community is to start a group or join a group that meets every week. Because if you join a group that meets every week, you don't have to do anything to have your social time. It's just set up for you. You just go every week. So you could join or start a home group at your church. You could attend a Bible study. You could form a mom's group where you visit while the kids play. Or you could find or start a group based around one of your hobbies. My daughter and her husband, they have a craft night with some of their friends. Another one of my friends has a scrapbooking group. There's people who have writers groups, all kinds of groups, or a hiking group. When we're in Montana, most Sunday afternoons, we'll go hiking with the big group of our friends. And the way we started that is we just went to church one Sunday and we just started asking around. We said, hey, we're going hiking after church. Anybody want to join us? And we rounded up 10 or 12 people that first week just by asking. And we just started doing that every week. So it's something we really look forward to and just a really fun group. Okay, number 4, this is my last tip for situational loneliness, and that is to find ways to serve people locally or online. So often we think community is all about fun or family, but there's great community in serving others. So make a list of all the ways you might get involved in serving others in your community or in your church, okay? So we have friends who do Habitat for Humanity. I think there might be a group of handyman in our church in Hamilton who go and do home repairs for people. Or you could call your Chamber of Commerce, see if there's some volunteer organizations in your town, and that will help match you up with a program that would work for you, or look for ways to serve through your church. And actually, this makes me think of number 5, which I actually didn't have on my original list, and that would be to get a job. Even if you don't need the money, you could get a job, say, as a checker at your local grocery store. That would help you meet people, visit with people. So find a job that gets you out in the public, serving people, getting to know people, having community. Okay, let's look at the second one, emotional loneliness. Okay, number 1 is to let go of unrealistic expectations for how people love you. Okay, so sometimes we feel like people have to act a certain way to show love. And of course, some of these things are, yeah, they do. But sometimes we have unrealistic expectations for their behavior. And we're maybe a little bit needier than we need to be. So we have to remember we live in a fallen world. No one is perfect at loving. And just start believing that people love us. So like way back when I was in that situation where I felt like nobody loved me, they did love me. The problem wasn't the other people. The problem was me not believing people loved me. Okay, number 2, let go of envy. So it helps to recognize that we don't know the whole story behind other people's relationships. So you look on Facebook or you look around your town, you think, oh, these guys have it all together. If only I had that type of relationship. But we don't always know what goes behind the scenes. I remember back in my difficult marriage days, back when I was, a long time ago, I remember admiring 2 people's marriages in our town thinking, boy, if only my husband were more like that person's husband. Well, both of those marriages got divorced a few years later. And those husbands who seemed so wonderful and were wonderful in many ways were not wonderful in other ways. And that caused their wives to leave them. So don't waste your time envying what you see out there. I would say almost everybody out there is lonely in some way. I think we all feel that way. In modern society, we just feel so disconnected. Okay, number 3, recognize that some stages of life are more prone to loneliness. So back when all my kids were at home and they were older, I was pretty much never lonely because my kids were like my friends when they were older, when they were middle schoolers and teenagers. But once they left home, then I had plenty of opportunities for loneliness. And I also remember being lonely back when I was in college. So you may be in a stage of your life where you're more prone to loneliness. And often in those stages of life, you have good opportunities for friendship. So again, go back to those tips I had at the beginning and try and be really proactive about making friends. Number 4, believe that people love you. That kind of goes back to that first one of letting go of unrealistic expectations for people. name actual names of people. So say, so-and-so loves me, so-and-so loves me. And this doesn't always work if you're going through the no one loves me stage. One thing you could do is renew your mind with some of the questions from the Renewing the Mind Project or my I Deserve a Donut app. Go to insecurity. I have questions on feeling rejected and condemned. Now, I didn't have those questions back in the days when I was, super lonely and thinking nobody loved me because I hadn't written them yet. But that's a really helpful tool. I also have an idea, what's under the insecurity chapter, and it's about feeling like God loves you. So you meditate on all the Bible verses I have on that. So just get my free I Deserve a Donut app. There's a whole list of Bible verses under insecurity, and just sit down on the couch, get a little cozy blanket, cover yourself up, meditate on those verses and picture God doing the things he says he'll do it in those verses. When I did that, I couldn't believe how much difference it made in making me feel that God loved me. So believe that people love you and believe God loves you. And the fifth one is develop a thankfulness habit. So that's a great step to take no matter what our problem is. But for loneliness, if we start thanking God for all the people in our lives who love us, that will help us start believing that they love us. And also, I think if we start doing that, if we start thanking God for all these different people, hopefully it'll help us to reach out. Because here's the thing about loneliness. Loneliness is kind of, it becomes a self-absorption sort of thing where we're focused on us and focused on, wishing we had a friend rather than focusing on who is there out there that I can love. We can look for lonely people. We can look at other people to love. And when we focus on others, we automatically feel better when we focus on serving others. Okay, social loneliness. And interestingly enough, the first step I have for getting over social loneliness is to focus on others. So if your loneliness is caused by shyness or social awkwardness, try to focus on others when you go to a gathering. So there was a stage in my life when I felt intimidated at social gatherings. So I would pray through 1 Corinthians 13 on the way to the gathering with the people there in mind. So that helped me get the focus off myself and onto others. That led me to feeling more comfortable at the gathering, and I experienced more connection, and I was just enjoying others. So I wasn't thinking, oh, what do they think of me? Instead, I was enjoying them. I wanted to love them well. So that was a real game changer. Okay, second one again is renew your mind. If you have low self-esteem, do those same insecurity questions. There's one on feeling inadequate, feeling rejected or condemned. You could go through some of those in the Renewing the Mind Project or I Deserve a Donut app. So the key to overcoming insecurity as we go through these questions is not to get to the point where we think we're great, but to get to the point where we're more focused on other people rather than ourselves, and where we're willing to be vulnerable to love them well. Okay, number 3, ask God to help you connect with others. Okay, sometimes we're lonely because we don't value relationships. So you might be listening to this whole podcast and think, yeah, that sounds good, but it sounds like too much work, and I don't really care. I'm happy being alone. Okay, the question is God happy with you being alone? God wants us to be involved with people. I remember when I was a teenager, we used to play piano and sing at our house. So I was playing the piano and I was singing a song made popular by Barbra Streisand. It was called People. And the song said, people who need people are the luckiest people in the world. But you know what? At the time, I didn't feel like I needed people. So as I sang that song, I was a Christian at the time, I asked God to help me be a person who needed people. And he did. He changed my heart and helped me love people and need people. Now I go out of my way to make connections with people. So if you're a person who doesn't naturally need people, doesn't care about them, or, does love people, but maybe your project's more important, pray and ask God to help you change that. Okay, and number 4 is to work on your faults. So that's one last thing we can do to overcome social loneliness, is to work on character traits that make people not want to be with us. So we all have faults in this area. Every single one of us listening and talking, me included, we have faults that sometimes make people think, I don't really want to be with that person. So we might be constantly complaining. We might be negative. Maybe we say rude things, or we talk nonstop. We give advice all the time. Maybe we don't ask questions of other people. We just let them always ask questions of us. So those are all things we can change so that people want to be with us more. So if we're going to overcome loneliness, it helps to become better at loving people, and that will help us be better at relationships, which will help curb our loneliness. Okay, number 4, spiritual loneliness, and that's when we're not feeling close to God. So number 1 is put effort into your relationship with God. Okay, so a lot of times with the relationships, like, people have marriage seminars and they'll say, do all these things to have a good marriage. And we think, okay, yeah, we'll do that. But when it comes to our relationship with God, we think, no, that should just happen naturally. But a relationship with God is like a relationship with anyone else, quality and quantity time. Both of those do make a difference. Jeremiah 29:13 says, you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. So seeking God with our hearts, it's more than just a 5-minute duty-driven quiet time each morning. So it's making our relationship with Him important. And again, as you listen to this, don't beat yourself up, okay? There's so many steps I've already talked to, and it'd be easy to say, that's just too overwhelming. But just pick 1 or 2 when you're all through, and don't feel like, I have to do everything, and don't beat yourself up, because our walk with God is a progression, and hopefully each year we're changing and becoming more like Him. Okay, number 2 in spiritual loneliness is develop a renewing habit. And the reason I say it's just this is because for me, that was the thing that brought me closer to God than anything else. So when I started taking off all the lies I was believing, putting on the truth, looking at both people and life from God's perspective, I grew so close to Him. And I started doing that when I started truth journaling, which I have lots of articles on my website about truth journaling, and also my Rally Bible study talks about truth journaling. And that's also a Bible study. Both Rally and my James Bible study, those are Bible studies that are kind of about going to God for help with your regular life, which is my 3rd tip. Do a Bible study that helps you discuss life with God. Because, have you ever had an intimate conversation with somebody, like a relative stranger, maybe on an airplane or maybe somebody else, and you found that as you shared your life with them, you started feeling close to that person? Well, it's that way with God and us too. When we start sharing regular life with God and have, conversations about what's going on in our lives, that can make us feel closer to Him. And often those conversations with God are more one-sided. We're just saying, God, can you help me? Can you get me this? Can you change this? Those kind of conversations, they don't usually help us feel close to Him. But we do start feeling closer when we can discuss things with Him, but that's kind of hard to do. So you could try either that James Bible study or Rally Bible study. That could help you, have those sort of conversations with them, kind of like a guide. And I do have a link in the website in this article that has an excerpt from the James Bible study if you want to try that out. Okay. Well, I hope some of these suggestions help. I know it was a lot of suggestions at once. And maybe recognize too that loneliness, if we were living in a third world country where we had people around us all the time, I would guess we wouldn't feel that lonely. Or if we lived in a culture where families were all together and we lived with extended family in the home, I would guess we wouldn't feel as lonely either. I'd be curious to try living in some of those situations and see what it's like. But part of loneliness is just, we all have big homes. We're home in our homes. People aren't sitting out in their front porches anymore. So it's a sort of thing we have to work at now in our modern age that we didn't have to work at as much in the old days. And it's also harder too because people are always on their phones and they're on computers, and you can't always get the person you want to be in relationship with off their phones or computers. So I realize it's a little bit hard sometimes. I hope you're not feeling too lonely. And I hope that you'll find some close friends if you're feeling like you don't have any friends. I hope that you'll make a little plan and try and work on having some friends. And if you have other suggestions that I didn't cover, I'd love to have you either come and add them to the blog post, come to my website, barbrowling.com, or usually I'll put something up on Facebook too, either the day the podcast comes out or the next day, and ask for any comments or takeaways. So go over to my Facebook page, my author Facebook page, and leave your comments there. I'd love to hear how you're doing. Anyway, hope you guys have a great Valentine's Day, and let me pray for you before we go. Father, thank you so much for for loving us, for always being here, even when we don't feel your presence. I pray that you would help us to search you out, to seek you with all our hearts, and that we may feel close to you. I pray that you help us to let go of anything in our lives that are coming between us. Pray that you would help us take off lies, put on truths. And Lord, I pray that you would help us to see people we might serve, to focus on serving others. And I pray that you would give everybody listening, and me too, give us all close friends, give us community so that we can belong. Okay, guys, actually, after praying that, made me think too that, church is often the best place to find community, especially in small groups. So, because we've been going to both small groups and small churches and big churches as we've gone to different locations in the country. At the big churches, usually nobody comes up and says hi to us. At the little churches, though, they notice us and they come and say hi to us, and they reach out to us. So, if you're at a big church, try to get a small group going. That'll really, really help you. Okay, hope you guys have a great day. I will talk to you later.
Thank you for listening to the Christian Habits Podcast. If you'd like more help with stopping and starting habits, check out Barb's blog at www.barbraveling.com.